Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners on this July 27, 2021 to County Administrator Issues and Updates. Administrator Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. We will start with the first policy session, and then we will intersperse issues throughout the breaks between policy sessions. We do not have a policy session. We do not have issues this morning, so we'll do it this afternoon. Commissioner Savas is out of the office today. We do have a quorum, although Commissioner Schrader is just on her way shortly. We'll start with after-action review of 2020 wildfires and 2021 winter storm. Daniel Neibauer, Interim Director of Disaster Management, will present. Please come on up.
I'm Daniel Neibauer, Interim Director of Disaster Management. Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Commissioners, and Administrator Schmidt. I'm here to present and discuss the themes identified during the after-action review of the 2020 wildfires and 2021 winter storm by the contracted independent review team. The review team collected data and input from a variety of sources, including incident documentation, multiple surveys, and 3 facilitated group debriefs. There's a lot of information here, so I'm going to be as succinct as possible to fit within our time frame. Next slide. The draft report identifies the 8 themes listed here. They're categorized into 2 general topics of operational planning and operational coordination, and this is done in conjunction with what FEMA calls their core capabilities. Within these themes, strengths and areas for improvement are identified. For each theme, recommendations are made to increase the capability of the county for future responses. I'll review each theme on the following slides. So we'll go to next slide, and we'll hit the category of operational planning. And to the next slide. So identified here, the strengths, the evacuation of CCOM was an identified strength following their continuity of operation and other plans, as well as their ability to devise solutions, and were able to evacuate with minimal disruption to calls during an increased time of call volume. Under areas for improvement, they identified increased familiarization with the emergency operations plan so that county staff and those in the EOC had better understanding of what the emergency operations plan said. Also talked about functional plans that are outdated or at least need to be familiarized or refreshed with folks. This is around areas of sheltering, volunteers and donations, other places where we had some functional plans or in some cases didn't have functional plans, and looking at that to get plans that need to be clear and a little bit more specific for different things. So under recommendations came review the emergency operations plan and continuity of operations plan and update, which we are on normal cycles to do. Review, refine, and communicate all of the functional plans that we have with our partners, internal and external, so that we both internally and externally know what we're planning to do. Review our training and exercise schedule to make sure that we are incorporating all plans and partners. So if we have a plan, that people are trained on it and will know how to implement it in the future. Under next slide for staffing. Under strengths, our coordination with jurisdictional partners for staffing. It occurs in a few areas, but specifically here for the EOC and the Public Inquiry Center, we had some of our jurisdictional partners send staff or take over some responsibilities that allowed us to free up other EOC staff to be able to work operations in other areas. And having that partnership was really great. And as I've said before, someday I hope we get to opportunity to assist them. Under areas for improvement, communication and coordination with partners for staffing issues. This comes around a lot of our community-based organizations that we're kind of helping and partnering and getting understanding of what their capabilities are and how to empower them to assist us greater. And then under county staffing, get increased depth within the county for staffing the EOC. There's definitely reports of EOC staff working longer hours on multiple days with few rotations off. So recommendations that are in here are to develop and maintain a pre-identified staffing plan for county staff, make sure that we've identified knowledge, skills, and abilities of EOC staff so we can identify different gaps as they come up and when we need people to fill in different spots, conduct training for all Clackamas County personnel at all levels, and develop and support a community organizations active in a disaster or a COAD so we can better fill them into the EOC and other responsibilities during a response. Next slide. Alert and notifications. A strength identified here was the integration of GIS staff into the learning process that helped us create that map that everyone got to look at and see where we're going. Under areas for improvement, delivery of evacuation notifications, looking at trying to make sure that we've got level 1s and 2s that are around level 3s so that we can better inform our community members as to the level of threat they're in. Lack of internal and external coordination for alerts and notifications. This came around making sure that those that were taking calls understood where the alerts were and could inform those calling in about where they currently were. Lack of trained personnel to send out alerts and notifications. There was a heavy reliance on just a handful of people that could be able to do that worked long hours, and we want to make sure that additional folks are able to do that. And making sure that alerts are sent out in multiple language and pathways, so it's not just coming to your phone. Is not the only method to get there. So some recommendations that came out of it are looking at predetermining evacuation zones, so it's easier and people know if you're in this zone, then you're going to evacuate, and it's easier, kind of similar to the tsunami zone planning that's done on the coast. Develop alert and notification templates that will include different languages and pathways, so those templates are already done and we can get messages out faster. Train more staff on how to issue alerts and notifications. Increasing community outreach to make sure we have more people signing up for and what the alerts mean when they come to them. In addition to some of the things up there, creating a common operating picture and the creation of an alerting task force that can work together to get alerts out quickly. Next slide. Under roles and responsibilities, a strength that was identified was information for roles and responsibilities available in the EOC. So if you were coming into the EOC and didn't have a role specified for you yet, there was information available there so someone could understand what they were to do. Under areas for improvement, specific roles and responsibilities that require a specific skill set or knowledge need more trained staff. We were heavily leaning upon just a handful of folks. EOC liaisons and site coordinators were needed to coordinate things like our shelters and our resource centers so that we better understood what was going on there. And a volunteer and donations plan is needed so that we have a better plan for when we get volunteers and donations coming in and we make sure they get routed appropriately. Under recommendations, the EOP should clearly define departmental roles and responsibilities, and to support that, department should be developing plans to support the EOP as needed. Then consider adding disaster roles and responsibilities into job descriptions, develop routine and just-in-time training for EOC staff, and once again, develop and support community organizations active in disasters.
EOP is personnel or what?
Emergency Operations Plan.
Plan.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Next slide. So here we'll go into operational coordination. This has more to do with the things that we were doing kind of in response, where the previous category is more of planning things to do. So looking at sheltering operations, strengths, interagency coordination and community partners helped us out big, both Multnomah County and City of Portland helping us to operate and staff our shelters, our two largest shelters. Areas for improvement, assisting vulnerable populations, making sure that we are getting messaging to them, and if they need help evacuating or other support, make sure that they are getting that support. Shelter resources and staffing have greater internal capability for sheltering. We depended a lot on the Red Cross, who was also overwhelmed at the time. Shelter health, safety, and security issues. Having the RV shelter definitely challenged us in a lot of different ways where typically a congregate shelter has walls and is able to have greater security for individuals coming in and going, and it was a lot difficult when you were in a large parking lot. So different recommendations. Predetermined shelter locations, both congregate and non-congregate. Some of that is done. We need to update it, make sure that we have facility use agreements and understand what the facility currently looks like. Deploy shelter liaisons to each shelter site so we can better understand what's going on and what the needs are, and make sure that county staff are trained on shelter operations. Next slide. Under communications, there was collaborative online tools and remote technology was effectively used. This is specifically for the winter storms and allowed us to operate in an environment where people could not travel safely either due to snow or blocked roads. Under areas for improvement, establishing a single point of contact at the EOC for all external partners so they know who to call in and when they need something, where they can call in. A need for EOC liaisons to support the different functions that are out there. And also information silos and bottlenecks for both internal and external to the county to make sure that communication is flowing. Some recommendations that the team developed were to develop a pre-incident communication plans and procedures, activate liaisons immediately when the EOC is activated so we can start with that single point of contact, and review and update messaging tactics during a response to make sure that they are current. Next slide. Under logistics and finance, once the request system was understood, resources were obtained easily, but there needed to be some work on the request system to get that done. We found logistics was consistently understaffed and overwhelmed for the amount of requests that were coming in. And there's a need for dedicated county staff that are familiar with logistics and finance procedures within the county to fill those positions. And there was inadequate financial and recovery or inventory tracking and resource request process, particularly at the beginning of COVID response, or I'm sorry, the wildfire response. Recommendations: set up logistics and finance sections early in an EOC activation. Usually they come in later, so to set them up early. Assign permanent county staff to logistics and finance sections. Develop procedures for the logistics and finance section, and train more county staff to be able to fulfill those roles. Next slide. So response coordination had a lot in it, so it is split over two different slides. Under strengths, support from county administration was always able to be contacted and provide support when needed. EOC command collaborated well. During the fire, we had 2 department directors in command, and they collaborated well and were available. Debris management, response, and plan implementation. It was a new plan, and it was implemented well, and for both wildfire and for the ice storm, got the proper things moving on time. EOC coordinators to support the EOC command, having staff that was there that could help identify where EOC command was or bring things to their attention in times of urgency. So under areas for improvement, no initial unified command was established. This is a little bit more specific to the wildfire. EOC command was not always available. It is interesting, occasionally we see an area that shows in both the strength and in areas for improvement, but there was different people had different perspectives on that. Internal and external coordination and position staffing to make sure there was enough staff within each position for the EOC. And under, next slide for recommendations, recommendations to develop a plan to have all response sections in the EOC consistently, establish a liaison position in the EOC for external agencies and partners to have that single point of contact, ensure EOC coordinator role is always staffed during activation, initiate unified command early in the response, and this is typically where we have command representation from different departments or even different agencies at the same time to make informed collaborative decisions, and ensure training and exercises are inclusive of community and response partners so that we make sure that we're not just training ourselves, we're training the partners that we typically respond with. Next slide, and we'll go into next steps. Next step is to finalize the after action report. We want to make sure this report gets out and reviewed thoroughly by internal and external partners to make sure it is representative of their perspectives and any documentation they may have that will help reinforce what we have in there. The next is to develop an improvement action plan. So the recommendations you saw were what the independent review team is suggesting. And so we need to take that as a county and with our other partners, develop those into distinct obtainable improvement actions to be able to say, these are the things that we can accomplish, this is where we need more resources, or this wouldn't fit for our county. While our independent review team has a lot of experts on it, and a lot of expertise from across the country, we definitely want to make sure that the solutions that we have are obtainable for Clackamas County and apply to Clackamas County. And then make sure that as part of that we're determining responsibility and a completion date. And then to implement that improvement plan, which can have timeframes of anywhere from a couple weeks, things we're already implementing, to months or years, depending on the type of projects that it is. So, and I believe that is the end.
Thank you, Daniel. We've been anxiously anticipating your report on after action for both the wildfire and the ice storm. And you identified areas of improvement, and I appreciate that very much. As we move forward to fill the better improve what you've identified. The EOC command structure, that's just not one person, correct? And do you have designees for that moving forward?
That'll be part of identifying who we do that. We do have some people that we know we will go to, but that would be representatives from Sheriff's Office and Dan Johnson, and depending
Transportation.
For transportation.
Finance.
Finance, and it does depend on the incident itself.
Communications and all those areas.
Yeah.
And how do we train those people?
Oh, we're going to go and look at the training those individuals already have and make sure that they have refreshers or additional training as needed.
And the unified command structure is maybe, different than what we're used to seeing, but not, because we know who, for instance, our department heads are. And if the department heads, for instance, are not available, then there's a designee, right?
Correct.
And that person needs to be trained as well. I remember back when I was here last time when we had about 75 county employees go back for emergency management training for a week-long simulation of an actual natural disaster. Those people agreed that in order to receive the training, then they would come back, be operational, they would be activated in time of a natural disaster. I suspect many of those people have left the county for retirement or other jobs, or I'm wondering if it's possible to identify some of those people if they still want to hold those responsibilities. It may be difficult, for instance, if you have young children, to leave your children at home. So identifying people who really want to do that. As far as the unified command, and just, being the bodies that help with all this.
Definitely, that is definitely part of the plan to implement.
And then you said partners. What do you mean by partners? How are you going to identify those?
Some are easy. Some of the partners we already have with, like the Red Cross or PGE that we respond with other times, but we want to be looking into other partners that we either haven't engaged or we've just started engaging through COVID and the different CBOs, community-based organizations, as well as the community planning organizations that we know that are out there, and understand their capabilities and our capabilities and how we can get them to work together before a disaster.
Great, wonderful. Do commissioners have any comments or questions for Daniel? Sonia?
Yeah. I have a whole bunch of questions, and so I'm wondering, instead of asking all of them now, is there a report that I can read that would probably answer them? I mean, I'm interested in how was the outreach done? Who did you connect with for this after action? Who were the partners that were engaged? That's one of my questions. I don't know what a COAD is, the Community Organizations Active Disasters. I'm wondering what that would look like in activating that. I don't know, what were the two largest shelters you referred to?
That was the Clackamas Town Center, the RV shelter, and the convention center did not have a lot of folks come through, but it was large with.
So that was wildfire, smoke or evacuation.
Correct.
Shelters. And then what would deploying shelter liaisons look like? What would that, I'm curious, what is all that? And did we have that during this disaster, or do we need to do it better for the next disaster?
Better for the next one. We'd have a county staff at each one of those shelters to even if it was operated by someone else, so that we understood what their needs were and that they understood what the county can provide in terms of resources. And we had communications back and forth with the shelters, but often it was with staff that was running that organization that was doing the shelter for us. And so there was just a little bit of a communication or understanding gap of some of the resources that would happen, or how we could provide them resources. So having a county staff there would smooth out that those communications.
Yeah, and I'm interested, when you talk about silos, I'm interested in what were the silos, where did things break down, what actually happened? Does the report talk about that?
The report will get into some of that, and we want to make sure that the report is through our internal and external partners to make sure that we've captured everything that's out there. We've tried to throw a wide net. The report will also talk about the methodology used to gather the information, but we want to make sure that we've asked as many people as possible what their different perspectives are and run that through everything else. So it's a lot of going through a lot of data. And
so is the report complete now?
No. It's going to go. It's through the review period with our partners.
Okay, so there were a couple issues that I know Gary, during the time of all this was going on, you just give the information to Gary and says, yep, I've got it. We'll put it on the after action. We'll analyze it. And the after action will analyze it. So a couple things that came up during the wildfires was an evacuation that needed to happen in Estacada of a place where there were people with disabilities, and they waited outside for a really long time for transportation. They never knew where to go. And that was a concern. And then there was a situation where people who were unsheltered were not allowed into the Red Cross shelter, and so the churches activated so quickly, I couldn't even believe it, within hours, to create a shelter over in Oak Grove. And I'm just interested if those situations were part of this initial step, or what our plan is.
Some of that was discussed in there, and we've tried our best to capture all the perspectives on different things and where, what the root cause for each one of those issues were.
Okay. And when will the plan be ready?
We're looking right now at mid-August.
Oh, good. So it's going to be really quick. Then I can delve in more deep, because
Yeah.
I think it's important that we all really understand this. And the piece that I really love about our Emergency Preparedness Council is the community engagement. That is so important. And we're pretty good in Clackamas County, actually, if you look at when you're in the midst of it, and then all of the connections that happen and people activate. But to systemize that is going to be really, really important. I'm interested in, I heard that there were issues during the wildfires in different command. I'm wondering what that was, what was going on. And I stayed out of it because it's not my role as policymaker during a disaster to engage. But it is my role to be an ombudsman and to share what I'm hearing so that that can be managed. And of course, it's all of our roles to make sure that we do all we can to support us moving forward. So can you talk a little bit about what that problems were with the command structure during the wildfires?
The initial part of the command structure?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it had to do with create several incidents starting and every discipline kind of operating on its own. Just to do it, right? Fire is there to put out fires. Law enforcement's there to protect people and make sure they have out. And here in the county, we were coordinating county resources and assets to support that. And so a lot of people just started, I think, responding and working on that. And as we got a few days in, then the command was able to pull together.
It's merged.
And we, learned a lot of lessons and got a lot more coordination at that point. And I think some of the realization from doing that was like, well, let's just make sure next time we start in the same room.
Oh, that's good.
And it's because we want to start with our own responsibilities and just kind of go in an urgent situation and getting that second to catch our breath and make sure that we're located in the same room or each of those on speed dial, I think will be more beneficial.
The piece that I'm also looking for in our after action is the misinformation that was out there. It's like, where is that in here? I didn't see it. Maybe it's there. And you talk really fast, Daniel. Oh,
sorry, I was trying to get through.
It's like you go so fast, and I'm like, oh. But I didn't see it, but it's really important.
It should be in the communication piece. We should have some information on that.
Okay, and so that's really important. And then communicating in the midst of a wildfire when people are on the ground or they're at home or they're not wanting to evacuate or they're going to go fight the fire themselves. How in the world do we develop the communication systems to prevent loss of life in situations like that? So are we going to look at that? Is that part of this?
We looked up, particularly in the alert section, and the states recently kind of helped supplement that a bit, but we also have a lot more training on our alert notification piece to get out there, and we've been practicing. The last couple of wildfires, we've been responding and putting into practice a slightly different procedure that allows us to get out the word a little bit faster on multiple different communication channels through social media as well as the alerts at the same time.
And when people are out there in the trenches, and I learned a lot about wildfires, but they're not going to be on social media or following it. They're probably going to be on certain types of radios or communicate. I mean, I don't know how they do it, but our methods didn't get there. Or maybe they're just going to ignore it. And then that's the other issue, is how do we start these conversations when aren't wildfires happening to get ready for the next one, which the Emergency Preparedness Council, I think, will help with that.
I think our notification, our emergency alerts, that's the word I want to use. I think those have been somewhat enhanced by legislative action to fund the alerts on your cell phone. And what is that number called, Daniel, that I'm talking about?
The Everbridge?
Yes.
The reverse 911
Yes.
systems,
yes. Yeah, and I activate that on my phone too. But isn't that site-specific?
There's a handful of different alerts that we can use depending on who we want to target, whether it's site-specific based on landlines or cell phones in an area versus the whole county. We have a capability of...
Well, what I mean is, if I have a cell phone and I registered my address and zip code, but I'm in Southern Oregon when the disaster happens here, I don't get notified.
You actually would. I was back east at...
Well, this is interesting because I talked to a senator, and he did not get the notification recently.
It depends exactly how you were signed up and where you were signed up.
Okay.
And what kind of alert we did. It's unfortunately not... where your phone is can depend. Where your phone is registered can depend on where you're
So
getting
if my
alerted.
phone is registered for my address,
Yep.
and let's say I'm in a different state, I still should get the notification?
You still should get the notification.
Okay,
If
that's
you
good to know.
aren't registered, but you were in that area that's of danger, and you
Yes.
happen to be driving through,
Yeah.
the alert system should also notify that cell phone if the individual has that cell phone.
Well, you know, it was
turned on.
interesting. I was in Washington State, was it last weekend or the weekend before? I don't even remember. And I had my county phone, and on my county phone, the Washington State COVID alerts kept popping up. And even when I came home, they kept popping up here, even though I was getting the Washington State COVID, and I'm not getting from Oregon. We probably don't have any.
I'm getting them from Maryland still from being back in DC.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So that is interesting how that works. Thank you. Okay. Any other, Mark?
Yes, ma'am, I have
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry, Martha.
Martha was first.
Go ahead,
Please,
Martha.
Go ahead, please. Daniel, it's the 27th of July, and in your independent review team recommendations, there's a lot of work there. But, every day that goes on between now and mid-September is a higher threat of a fire. So my question is, on all these recommendations, have you identified those recommendations that are most pressing that we can get done by, say, mid-August? And on the communications part under EOC LNOs, it's been my experience in the past when we send out a liaison officer to a unit that they'll send somebody back to us. So we have a better exchange of communications. I don't know if you intend to do that, but also on your exercise drill, that's a big to-do to get one of those done. But do you have a plan to have some sort of coordination meeting with these LNOs in one room to sit down and talk to them to prepare them for a what if, should it happen in September or August?
LMO.
Liaison officer, that's a liaison individual that would
Thank
come
you.
back and forth. Yeah. We haven't pulled them together in one room, but we've definitely talked with our partners, Red Cross, specifically some of our co-ed partners, in kind of understanding what's going on. We've talked with some of the shelters, and I think it depends on the staffing. With the Red Cross, certainly would be one where we would send a liaison to the shelter, and then, like the wildfires, we had a Red Cross person in with us. So we're still working on all of the different partner organizations that we would be going through.
Well, I was thinking about liaison officers for like the Dover CPO, should they get a fire, or Molalla, the city of Molalla, or government camp CPO, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, if they have activated an EOC, that would be something that we would be working on coordinating with that EOC to do there. I know that unfortunately not every city has the capability to do an EOC. For other recommendations that are in there, we've definitely already implemented some. And pretty much every weekend, we've got a plan going through into the weekend on who's going to be responsible for doing different sections and how we're doing the alerting. So we're working on all of the recommendations kind of moving forward on that. And then I think the training and exercise piece is something that we do have a vacant position for now, and we will be filling that. So we will have a position within disaster management that will help us do all of that coordination.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Martha?
Okay, so I was looking on page 4, and you said your functional plans were outdated. So
The
give me
functional what, Martha?
Functional plans. So what does that mean? Give me an example of a functional plan, and why is it just because we haven't experienced this before?
In some cases, haven't used it. So these cases are things like shelter management and
Okay.
resources, our Everbridge alerting plan, volunteer and donations, plan, and in some cases, we've done the plans, and shelter plans are one that are particularly notorious because facilities change. We don't necessarily have them, so we need to make sure that we're keeping the facilities list up. Things like the Everbridge, the alerting system, that changes their capabilities, and we need to make sure that the plan stays refreshed with what we're doing. And so we're working on trying to make sure that we've got plans that are easily understood, easily updatable, and easily trained to. And so we're modifying some of the plans to make sure that will happen. But it'll take some time to get all that plan coordination.
Okay, and that'll be in the report then, probably.
Martha, can't hear you.
Martha?
That will be in the report in August?
Yes.
I'm assuming too. Okay, my other question is, one of the things that was interesting to me was the lack of knowledge of residents about what urban firefighters do and what people who fight forest fires do. There was a lot of disconnect in the rural areas. How can we address that, and how we can educate people to let them know that the firefighters that are here in our city are going to, if the building's on fire, they'll do it, but they are not trained. They're not trained to do wildfire. They're not hot shots. They're not filed to do the mitigation. They're not trained to do the back burns. So is there something like that we're going to let people know that there was a lot of turmoil in the rural areas over that?
Yeah, I have to talk more with the Fire Defense Board about how they're planning on discussing that and working that into their after-action report and their
Okay,
ways
because
forward.
that was a huge issue, if I recall, going out there. And how broad is our coordination with the Red Cross? I mean, are we kind of joined at the hip with them on these issues, pretty much?
Yeah, on a lot of
Other
these, we've been
organizations?
talking pretty consistently with the Red Cross. We have a liaison assigned to our county, and I think it's a little bit of a race every time we have a little brush fire or fire to see if he calls me first or I call him first. But we talk pretty consistently on the different shelters, and they've been working on getting agreements with different shelters as well, and understanding of what their current capabilities are based on the other wildfires that are going on in the state and others.
He also sends me fairly regular emails on impending weather changes, for instance, the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in my office, and I learned a lot about what the Red Cross can offer for us. And maybe that's a position we might want to consider on our Emergency Preparedness Council or not, because I think training of our people, of our volunteers, is really important.
I used to be on their board.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice,
the American
Martha.
Red Cross. It
Very
was
nice.
that was a while ago. But, their resources are pretty phenomenal. At least that's been my experience. So.
Anything else, Martha?
Nope.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of overlap. We have these two wildfires and the ice storm that these relate to, but we have the heat dome, which just happened, and now we have another heat event that's predicted coming up. What's the overlap, and what are we doing to take what we've learned from these disasters to prepare for this weekend, for instance?
Yeah, we've been talking already this weekend, working with social services, public health, CCOM, other departments kind of on what we're doing in terms of making sure we're getting messaging out, PGA as well, making sure we're getting messaging out, not only of where shelters are, cooling centers are, recognizing symptoms, things you can do to stay cool, checking on your neighbors. So in taking some of these lessons learned and applying there, we're also, even though it's before this current heat wave, we'll have a debrief on Thursday from the last one where we've collected information and started working on an improvement plan from that one to go through. We probably won't do a full after action, just since we're in the midst of so many things. I would like to get things documented into an improvement plan and start working on them initially. So we're doing that. We're trying to make sure that we're getting some of those actions, particularly those, like Commissioner Shull mentioned, that we can get done quickly and get them in process.
I think the people that I'm most concerned about, from what we're hearing from the information we have from Multnomah County, it's those people that aren't connected to internet, aren't connected to people that are older, people that Meals on Wheels folks, or I'm really concerned about them. I just was in letting my daughter off, or picking her up actually, and on the side of the road was a woman, looked like she was in distress, and I just went, stopped the car. My husband said, oh my gosh, she looks and she's in distress. I said, let's turn around, let's go back. And I just asked her, I said, do you need a phone? Do you need to? No, I'm just so hot. I'm just so thirsty. I'm just so thirsty. And I said, hold on there. And I went to where my daughter lives, got some water, took it to her. And she said, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. But, you know, you get overheated, you get disoriented, you can't think, you can't really function. And then fortunately, someone had come to pick her up at that moment. But it just made me think of how quickly that heat can overtake you. And that message of everybody needs someone, how do we get people to really connect with people during these times?
Yeah, we're trying to engage partners like the Meals on Wheels or others that are already connected with social services and already have people that they know that might need help. But that's why we're also pushing that check with your neighbor communication. Another thing we heard from a couple of the fire districts were that people did not want to bother anybody. So they didn't call or ask for help because they didn't want to bother anybody. Right. Everybody was busy. So that's why we're trying to push the check your neighbors. If you know somebody that doesn't have air conditioning or needs cooling, call them, invite them over for a glass of iced tea. Just something, maybe let them spend the night when it's a hotter night. So we're really trying to push that messaging to get those connections.
Do we know what percentage or what units of our public housing does not have air conditioning?
I do not know, but I can work on finding the answer.
I mean, that's a really good question, and to do specific outreach to those individuals to get them to cooling centers.
Actually, I was visiting cooling centers during the heat dome, and I was surprised. I felt that they were underutilized.
Well, we asked for numbers on that,
surprised.
Daniel. Did you? I specifically asked when we set up the cooling centers if we could keep track of
They
the
did.
usage.
They were taking numbers down.
But we haven't got those numbers.
No, I remember.
Yes, they were emailed to you, Commissioners.
They were?
They're in your email.
Yeah, the other piece is 211 did not function for Multnomah County. I don't know where people call in Clackamas County to get information or to get transportation to a cooling center.
I talked to the emergency manager of 211, and they will, it was just contract issues I think they had with the state, but they are now open 24/7 for the entire state, and we'll have information for the, I can say at least Clackamas County on our cooling centers. We have made sure that coordination
And then
will happen.
people can get transportation to them somehow? How does that work?
That I'll have to check with social services. I'm not sure what transportation resources are available.
Okay, because that's going to be a really important piece for moving forward. I just don't want to see preventable deaths in our county.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I know.
We're all in this.
I know. I'm still amazed by that. I'm, 14 in Clackamas County? 14. I'm just still almost in shock over a heat event, and people would die in our county.
It's terrible.
Yeah, and the other counties as well. It's a very strange occurrence, and it's preventable.
Yeah, well, who's ever had heat exhaustion? Anyone? No, I had it hiking, and I can tell you go cuckoo there for a second. It's like until you get your system set up, you can't even think. Yeah.
Interesting. Any more comments?
Well, I think we all think about pets, too.
Oh, yeah,
That's
pets.
just an afterthought.
Our pets, our livestock, our chickens.
Yep.
Well, I have dogs. I was worried that I couldn't take them out because they would be burned. And I know that compared to human life, I mean, I'm not equating it to be the same thing, but it does, sometimes people don't realize that their animals can be harmed. So just to kind of get that out there, too.
Any more questions or comments for Daniel? Well, thank you very much for the very informative report. We look forward to the full text in August. Gary.
Thank you. So, Commissioners, you have about 90 minutes left before you lose quorum, and there's a lot to do. So here's what I propose. We'll do the state legislative session review next. Staff has graciously agreed to make that 30 minutes instead of 60. Then we'll do the issues list, and we'll attempt to get to the final policy session today, but Dana may have to bump you. So that's the plan. So let's go for it. So next, Public and Government Affairs, 2021 State Legislative Session Review. Chris Lyons and Trent Wilson from the team, and Sue Hildick, the director. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chris Lyons, Public and Government Affairs, joined by Trent Wilson, also Public and Government Affairs. As you just heard, we're here to share with you an update on how this year's state legislative session went and provide a summary of the outcomes that are relevant to Clackamas County. In your packet, you have a 98-page report going into great detail on all of the results from session. We couldn't quite get those last 2 pages in. But in terms of why do we do this, and I think, both in terms of all the work that goes into the report and also presenting to you here today, this is really in alignment with your Performance Clackamas strategic plan of wanting to build public trust and show all the work that we do on behalf of the public every session that benefits our residents, and make sure that they are aware of everything that happens at the state level and really bring it home to them at the local level so they see the results of the work that we're doing, because I think it's very important. The report is divided into 3 primary sections. The first 2 are the initiatives and priorities that you had laid out and adopted in your legislative agenda that you approved earlier this year for 2021, touching on the courthouse, I-205, et cetera, and we'll go into those in a minute. And then the third section is all the other bills, dozens and dozens of bills that also matter to the county, and many of which we took positions on. For your reference, we've laid those out under the board's 5 strategic priorities of Performance Clackamas, so they all, you can see what they relate to in terms of the principles that you have adopted in your legislative agenda. And Trent will give a summary on each of those shortly. We have a number of department staff here, department directors here in the room, so if you have any questions along the way, and they are more technical or detailed in nature and beyond our expertise, we're happy to bring them up if they are able to provide responses. So in terms of session, this was probably the most unique session the state has ever had. As you know, it was almost entirely virtual, with the exception of votes on the floor of the House and Senate. And that really made the session extremely difficult for everybody involved, both legislators and those of us who are advocating and part of the lobby. But in the end, they got a lot done, and they wrapped up in 159 days, which was just 1 day shy of the constitutional deadline. And we have a lot to celebrate at Clackamas County. We achieved every single one of your priorities that you had laid out on your agenda. The courthouse, 205, Sunrise, and the locks are now positioned for major progress. And I will point out that 205 and the locks are also really primed now for additional success at the federal level in our advocacy work there. The legislature did a lot in terms of the housing crisis, wildfires, and COVID, which were also on your legislative agenda. In terms of funding, I tallied this up. We have about $450 million that is earmarked and specifically coming into Clackamas County in some way for projects, programs, and entities. Of that amount, about $100 million is coming specifically to Clackamas County, the government, for our projects that we have prioritized. And that doesn't even include all the funding that is going to state agencies that will ultimately flow out to local governments. Also tallying up all of the bills that we took positions on, there were 46 of them by my count, and we had success on 39 of those. So that's an 85% success rate. I think that's our best yet. In addition to all of the support we had here at the county from our departments, we also can attribute a lot of the success to the Clackamas Caucus of Legislators, the 16 members from our delegation who are working together and advocating for all of the county's priorities that we've identified, for many of the county's priorities that we've identified. Their support was essential to being able to be successful on all of those. And in addition to that, a lot of our work was in coalitions and working with many stakeholders throughout the state in support of what we were pushing for. And we have some good examples. The Sunrise Project in particular, we had a super diverse and broad coalition of entities that were involved in that, and because of those coalitions that we had built, we were successful on those. So without further ado, I'll get into the specifics on first the 2 initiatives. The Clackamas Courthouse. We went into session requesting $94.5 million for the courthouse replacement project to replace the existing 81-year-old building on Main Street in Oregon City with a new facility here on the Red Soils campus. That request represents the state's 50% match and was also part of the governor's recommended budget. We work closely with the Oregon Judicial Department, the Legislative Fiscal Office, and our Clackamas Caucus throughout session. Chair Smith, Commissioner Fisher, Judge Steele were all very involved in advocating to our legislators and testifying before the committee. The one sticking point that I'll point out that we encountered during session was to do with the financing approach that we had decided to go down, the public-private partnership, simply because it was a new concept that legislators didn't fully understand, especially as it was pertaining to a courthouse project. But in the end, we were authorized the full requested amount of $94.5 million. With one caveat, there was a budget note that was included in one of the bills that requires OJD in the county to submit a report before the next legislative session to talk more about the P3 agreement. And once that is provided, then the legislature will consider approval of the expenditure limitation on those dollars. So we're working on that now, and we should be set to hopefully provide that before the next emergency board meeting, which is slated for later September.
Great.
The I-205 project, you know that we have been pushing for that construction of that I-205 bottleneck project for many years now, and our request going into session was to essentially fund what was needed to be able to allow ODOT to move forward to construction. Throughout session, we worked closely with ODOT, the Transportation Co-Chair Susan McLean, the Clackamas Caucus, Representative Prusak, and Washington County, among many other stakeholders. And in the first few months of session, Speaker Kotek convened a work group that I was a part of to hash out the details of what that bill would do. And around that same time, the Clackamas County Board adopted a set of transportation values that was super helpful to guide our positioning throughout session on that issue. And what the Speaker's bill ultimately did was it took the 1 penny that had been dedicated to the Rose Quarter project and instead made it what was called a flexible or a regional penny and allowed ODOT to use it for a few other purposes, for the I-205 project, for the Boom Bridge project, and for tolling future congestion management in the region. Another important thing that bill did was say that tolling revenues can be spent on adjacent, connected, and parallel routes off the interstate system. So that was very important to us, like our communities, West Lynn, others that might bear the burden of changing traffic patterns when tolling is introduced. Chair Smith testified in support of that bill. Commissioner Savas at the local level was very involved in the kitchen cabinet group that we had established with some local leaders. And ultimately the contents of that bill that the Speaker had developed were incorporated into HB 3055, which was the Transportation Omnibus bill. And in the last few days of session, that bill passed. So what that means is, and ODOT has said that beginning in the spring and or summer, they will be able to begin construction on I-205, the Abernathy Bridge phase, which is between the Oregon 43 and Oregon 213. So huge success there and more to come, but that is certainly the first step. Moving to our priorities, I'll start with COVID. This one is relatively simple because a lot of the work on this had been done in the previous year. There were 3 special sessions held in 2020, and the Legislative Emergency Board had met countless times. I think it was every other week or so to appropriate hundreds of millions of dollars towards different public health needs. And then in addition to that, during the session, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act, which allocated $2.6 billion to Oregon to be spent in a variety of ways. And over the course of session, the legislature found ways to spend that money, and a lot of it went towards COVID-related and public health-related issues, and some of those we'll talk to here in a few minutes. The next priority was wildfire recovery, and there's a few components to this. First, I'll just say, and you'll find in our report, there were a number of bills that were passed relating to providing financial and regulatory relief to homeowners who were impacted by the wildfires last year. In addition to that, there were funding earmarks that were passed in the end of session bills for a variety of wildfire purposes. A few of those include millions of dollars for grants to counties, reimbursing counties for the lost tax revenue. 116,000 of that will come to Clackamas County this year and in future years. $2 million for the Clackamas Fire District, $228,000 for the Canby Fire District, $280,000 for the Estacada Rural Fire District, and $385,000 for the Malala Rural Fire District. And then hundreds of millions for other natural disaster preparedness and wildfire recovery issues associated with housing, food, and shelter. In addition to that, there was a more forward-looking wildfire bill, kind of thought of as the Omnibus wildfire bill, SB 762. Matt Garrett spoke to that a couple weeks ago when he was here at the county on how that's going to be rolled out by the state. And really, it's going to be providing this comprehensive framework for the state on responding to and mitigating future wildfires. And $188 million was dedicated to carrying out all of the work that was part of that bill. The Willamette Falls locks. This has been another legacy issue we've had on our agenda for a number of years. Finally this year, the legislature passed HB 2564, which is the bill that establishes the public corporation that will ultimately be the entity that holds, that owns the locks. They will be transferred from the Federal Army Corps of Engineers to the state level entity. And Reps Meek and Prusak have been big advocates for that during session, including the entire caucus that have prioritized this issue. In addition to that bill, the legislature also allocated another $7.25 million for repairs of those locks. That's roughly half of what is likely needed to get them fully modernized and opened. And now we are looking at the federal level for those additional monies to help close the gap. Sunrise, we went into session with a $4 million request to fund what we called the Sunrise Gateway Corridor Community Visioning Concept. And this was a plan, it will be a 2-year plan for the county to essentially work with the community and determine what the future of that area should look like and all the details for eventually getting to that point. Included in that is essentially putting together a roadmap of how we get there. I think what's most important is it will tell us how we can invest scarce dollars in the future to essentially get to what the community is after out there. As you know, there's countless businesses, existing residents, but it also has this immense opportunity for additional housing and jobs. So we want to make sure we're taking advantage of that. The $4 million was approved in the final budget bill, and we have Reps Bynum and Drazen to thank, who are our primary champions on that, and then the entire Clackamas caucus.
It's amazing.
And finally, the housing crisis. This was just a catch-all priority that we'd had on our agenda. And this session, there were just absolutely historic investments made. I think there are 6 pages dedicated to all of the bills in this report relating to this issue. Just a few, we divvied it up into a subsection on houselessness and tenant protections. One example of that is there's $40 million allocated for emergency housing and shelters. There's another section on development, land use, and preservation for multifamily housing. And there was $410 million allocated for affordable housing. And in addition to that, $100 million to preserve existing affordable housing. And then lastly, homeownership and foreclosure protections. There was quite a bit of legislation on that as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Trent to round us out with all the other bills that were important to the county.
All the other bills. I know we're tight on time, so we'll focus on the ones that you've asked us to prioritize today. So Chris was really talking about the bills that we are chasing and pursuing, and the bills that I'll be talking about are the ones that we're really responding to. And so with 2,500 introduced bills in the legislative session, You can imagine that many of these impact our departments in a variety of ways. And so I'll hit on a few of those. And the way that we do this is through our principal language in our agenda that you approved back in January. It gives us some broad language to just be flexible and nimble as legislative issues pop up. And then, of course, priorities come to us through you from advocates throughout the session that we also use to as part of our advocacy. So I can make this a little bit interactive because it's not as focused as what Chris is talking about. They're a lot more, again, responsive to different sections here. But we'll start on page 18 with workforce legislation. This was a priority early on in the session for us with Senate Bill 623. We were requested by the workforce program here in Clackamas County to pursue this, and it creates a committee for continuous improvement, which sort of reinvests opportunities from state funding back into community programs to, focus on workforce programs. This was a really big win for Clackamas County and our workforce providers here. So we were really excited about it. And also on page 18 is a statewide infusion of funds for Brownfield programs, both for programs that are working on Brownfield initiatives at the public level, but also for resources for those who own Brownfields who want to sell them, like gas stations that are no longer able to, be a gas station or, retired garage owner or something like that. So good opportunities here for reinvesting those sites that are classified as Brownfields. Also for our business community, I want to focus on page 19 for a second with House Bill 5006, which was sort of a big funding bill. And you can see right there, there's $7.15 million that went into just Clackamas County into our business recovery centers, Wilsonville Chamber, North Clackamas Chamber, Westland Business Recovery Centers, Oregon City Chamber Business Recovery Center as well. So we have legislators to thank for this infusion of funds, but that's going to, a lot of effort to help our businesses in Clackamas County recover in those areas. So really big investments there that we're excited about. Another section that we focus on, and these are all divided up by our performance Clackamas goals, so that's how these are divided. So within the strong infrastructure side of things, we have a good look at broadband funding. The state's investing $120 million statewide. These are competitive grants, so we're working with our TS department so that they're aware of the opportunities here as they come up. It's a really exciting one, as well as House Bill 2344. This is the flushable wipes bill. We worked closely with Clackamas Water Environment Services. As you know, if a wipe bag says that it's flushable, it's not, and that creates problems down at our facilities. And so we worked closely with our department to make sure that this, how those things are labeled is fixed and corrected to help our services. That's better for the end user in the long run. So we were happy that that passed as well. Another good opportunity here is Senate Bill 5534. This is the county fairs capital investments or capital improvements. This is just $10 million. It's statewide, 36 counties. If you divide $10 million by 36, that's $277,000 to each county. It's not going to be divided that way. This will be a competitive grant, but these dollars sort of came out of a notion that there were a lot of capital needs for state fairs across the state, and so it was initially intended to be sort of a program to go pursue and identify what those are. It's became more broad as the bill sort of finalized, and so you can apply, I think, for a variety of things, but when you spread it out, it's not a lot of peanut butter over a big slice of bread. There's a lot of need. But it's a good opportunity to add on to a lot of good work here. Also for some big infrastructure wins here, look on page 20 at the very top. House Bill 5006 identified a few really critical things here, including funding for a shuttle that's going to go and help solve some problems for a transit gap that we have on I-205 all the way from Tualatin over to the Clackamas Town Center with a variety of stops, as well as $14 million to the city of Sandy. That's not us, but they're in our county. We love them. So they have a big problem up there with their sanitation facility. This is a big investment into that, so that's a huge win for the residents of Clackamas County over by Sandy. $4.79 million just to our Clackamas County Fairgrounds for the livestock barn. I believe that collapsed back in 2014 after a snowstorm, give or take a year. Might be messed up on my history, but this is a much needed infusion of funds for a project that we've been looking at for a long, long time. So those are a few highlights on that one. For our natural resources side of things, we have a recycling modernization program. This is really big for our sustainability office. This creates some statewide metrics for how our recycling is done in the state. So we're tracking that closely because it changes quite a few things that we're really excited about. The big stuff here for ensuring safe, healthy, and secure communities, still on page 20, is a historic infusion of funds into behavioral health programming. So $470 million statewide into this. And the reason a reason, one of many reasons that this historic infusion of funding is coming in is because of the passage of Measure 10 back in November, which decriminalized a lot of drug use here in the state of Oregon specifically. And it's a goal to try to divert a lot of money from sort of the public, don't want to say public safety, but like sort of the criminalization efforts of that and put it back into the recovery and addiction treatment of the usage of those funds. So hopefully helping folks there. And the reason these funds were able to be so successful, back to what Chris was saying, is the infusion of funds from the American Rescue Plan Act was able to supplement funding here because behavioral health is called out specifically in what the state got for how to use those funds.
That's one time.
There's a lot of one-time funding in here, but for the behavioral health programming, this is great news for the next couple of years. But Measure 110 is a lifetime paradigm shift for the way that things are done in Oregon. So we'll be watching that closely as it evolves. There's a ton of information in here. One I want to point out is on page 23, still on the behavioral health topic, which is aid and assist services. There's a good amount of funding here. This is one that we tracked pretty closely because there were some liability concerns that we felt were mostly addressed towards the end of session. So we were able to track that, but it was one that we were watching closely. It's a program that we work on here at Clackamas County through Mary Rumbaugh's office, and so it's just one that we really wanted to watch, and we were, I think, happy with the number of dollars that came in, but still are watching it closely for the liability concerns. Added to a lot of this on page 24 there is a massive investment into intellectual and developmental disabilities case management. This has been on the county's agenda for the last 2 years. It was underfunded in 2019, and it was on our agenda in 2020 as well. As you know, the 2020 legislative session ended with a walkout, so that was a miss in terms of solving a funding gap there. So they invested $87.6 million above what they did in the former 2 years, which is a 42% increase over what they did 2 years ago. That's a really big deal, but it's still not the full gap of the recommended funding. There's a lot of work that needs to happen here, so we'll be working with our social service department to see how this new infusion of funds is helping them do their good work and to see if we need to keep tracking it for additional needs. And then one that I think is actually on your issue session today, also on page 25, is an infusion of funds in the early childhood budget. This is House Bill 5513. I want to point out the first bullet there, which is the preschool expansion program. I know that there's some concerns with the preschool promise programming and the summer fundings that happens within that program in particular. Summer programs are happening now, and so those programs are being funded right now, and these funds were just approved at the very end of June. It takes a little bit of time for the legislation to turn into contracts, to turn into dollars. And so they are working on that. We've been in contact with the Department of Education as well as the Governor's Office about the delay. Safe to say a delay. It's contractual. And so we've isolated it to just some contractual issues where they're trying to just tidy up some language in that information. But the good news is all of the dollars from this program are retroactive back to July 1st. So if a program has spent funding on this since July 1st, it will be reimbursed from this program of funding. So I think that's really, really good news there. It's also, they've told us they're prioritizing those contracts to make sure that they move very quickly. And the final thing I want to touch on here, and there's really a lot, but it's the public health modernization funding. It's $60 million. This will be biannual. This is the budget moving forward. Is the $60 million baseline budget. Used to be zero about 4 or 5 years ago. Then it was like $5 million a year statewide. Now it's $60 million a year statewide. I think the COVID-19 pandemic showcased that public health is a big priority for a lot of people in the United States, including Oregon, and so I think their work is showing in that as well. On page 27, I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's another set of infusion of funds that go specifically into Clackamas County. And then finally here on page 28, building public trust through good government, which is the reason we're here. One of the things that we tracked really closely, and I mentioned it earlier with aid and assist, is we're starting to see the state divest a lot of its work towards the county level and try to add some of the funding. With some of that funding comes liability concerns, and so we're starting to see this trend where the liability shifts from the state down to the county and some of these things. It's something that we're watching that's a big priority for us at Clackamas County to make sure that that liability is leveraged or managed and covered if that work is going from the state to Clackamas County. This is on our legislative agenda. It's something that we watch closely, and so it's something that we're wanted to report on here is, that we have a keen eye on. That really is the list of random bills. As you can tell, there's a lot more inside of the report itself, and we'd be happy to answer any of the questions on those. But before I lose the microphone, I want to take just a quick moment to say thank you to all of the departments that help us do this. Chris and I get to present in front of you today, and we're really lucky to do that. But really, we want to say thanks to the department directors and their staff for their quick responses, their subject matter expertise, and their availability leading up to and during the legislative session. 1,600 bills that we tracked. It's not a fair comparison, but over 159 days. That's about 10 bills a day. That's just monitoring 10 bills a day. But we actually do a lot of that isolation of those 1,600 bills in the first 2 to 3 weeks, and that's 80 bills a day. And that's something that we do really fast across the county with every department. It's a lot of work. So we want to say thank you to all those departments that make this possible. If we're successful in PGA, it's because we had a good team throughout the county. And also want to say thanks to you, Board, for giving us clear direction throughout the session. That makes our job a lot easier, too.
And then just to close, looking ahead, we already have another session coming up soon. The legislature has tentatively set aside September 20th to the 24th for a special session focused on redistricting. So we've got that on our calendars. And then based on what you just heard, we're kind of excited that we kind of have a clean slate heading into next session on what our priorities might be. So we're going to be taking a lot of time in the interim, working with you, hearing from the public, working with our departments to figure out what the priority set should look like for 2022, and we'll be in touch.
Well, I want to thank you for this wonderful presentation, and there's so much information on this 98 pages. Both of you, Trent and Chris, have worked very hard. Some of this information had to be done within a day's notice or less, and you had many of us testify before the legislature, including me and other commissioners, and I appreciated the opportunity. You provided talking points. You provided assistance and advice on what would be good. I counted about 8 department heads in the audience right now, and there may be some on Zoom, who all will benefit from this. $450 million to our county government, to our county and government, is just unprecedented. Now our challenge is going to be the delivery system and getting the money out to where it belongs. And, our staff's been working so hard through all these multiple declared emergencies, but now maybe I hope our staff looks at this as maybe a fun part of your jobs, that we can really help people and work on the initiatives that you've always wanted to do. I'm just very thankful about what you presented today. It's like I say, it's just 46 bills and 39 were successful. We've been in these situations where we didn't get a whole lot. Early on in January, I hosted a county caucus meeting with our county caucus, and it was 100% participation. And we just went down the list. And I think they were surprised by me and Clackamas County's list of items that we wanted, which really paired up with what they wanted to do. And it was nice to be able to work with all of our senators and representatives on that. I just spoke at the luncheon at the Oregon City Business Association with Representative Mark Meek, and he presented for mainly the Oregon City area, his district. And of course that overlaid to Clackamas County, and we talked about working together and how this helps us, and he was able to do this, and then at the local county level to implement it. And the people who were in attendance, the business people, were really thankful that we're working together with our legislative partners in trying to move our county forward. I think our county is very much poised to be extremely prosperous and successful, more so probably than any time in recent history. So as the department heads are listening to this, you have some really fun and great work ahead of you, and I look forward to your success as well. Any other comments from Martha?
Yeah, I had a question about the early childhood piece. So that was 5513. Is that some of the dollars that were set aside for summer programs? Is that included under the umbrella of that
for
bill?
Preschool Promise, yes.
So those dollars are secure, because the holdup is that we are having entities, childcare folks, who are saying they can't operate unless they get some kind of funding. So there's a gap now between what the legislature has provided the money for and the timing, and that we are in danger of losing some external capacity in childcare. So how are we working to really shake that money loose? I mean, you said you have been. Is our Clackamas delegation aware that this is causing a significant problem for us here in this county in terms of childcare capacity? Do you know?
Well, I believe Commissioner Fisher's been making a couple phone calls, and so that's.
Just to Karn Power, Representative Power, because this was her initiative.
Right.
I was waiting until today to get further direction if we needed to, hoping that we could spread the love amongst all of our commissioners to make those calls.
Well, did she respond? She responded then. So
Oh, yeah,
is
no,
going
she
to
was
shut-
on it. She was she was calling the governor's office, she was calling the.
Okay, so she's aware then, because that's an issue that we'll
Yeah.
lose capacity.
Well, I didn't talk to her about the capacity piece. I talked to her just about the immediate funding need.
Well, the immediate funding will actually long-term affect our capacity for
Yep.
childcare in this county. So that's why it needs to happen sooner than later. And once again, it may put us in a situation where do we provide the money up front with the assurance that we get the money to repay that or not? And that's something, quite frankly, we've been, hesitant to do, given the constraints that we have with our budget, so.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your question. Yeah, what we've learned so far is that this really is not so much a political issue as it is an administrative issue. It just takes time to review those contracts. The budget bill was passed very late in June. The budget year starts July 1, so it just takes some time to turn those things around. But we've been assured that those contracts are prioritized.
Funding is secure.
That they're at the top of the list, that they're working on those things. Any funds that are spent in this program that is eligible for this program should be reimbursed back to July 1.
Okay.
So, but you're right, it is a gap. It's something that our staff has noted, something we like to work on in terms of solving that gap for the future so that this gap doesn't exist in the future. But at least for right now, we've at least been working and had some good communication with state administration that the gears are turning in the right direction and they're prioritizing these contracts.
By the end of the week?
They did not give us a timeline.
I think that's the
And
deadline.
we've asked many times, but they.
Okay, you'll let us know, especially Commissioner Schrader and I, who we need to call, what we need to do.
Well, I've always been an advocate for early childcare, and it has been a real uphill battle, even to have our local advocates finally recognize that this is a huge need here in our county, and will continue to be a huge need, and that has also established itself as an opportunity to get dollars in the federal level, specifically for early childcare and education and daycare, because it's an economic development issue. So, yeah, I think it's a huge priority for us at this point.
Thank you.
So can we just close the loop on that? Rod, can you come to the table? This is on your issues list, but it's related.
Yeah,
This,
we might as well.
Preschool promise funding. Rod Cook, H3S Director.
Thank you.
Yes, for the record, Rod Cook, H3S. Yes, basically what Trent and them have reported, that's what we're hearing as well, that the contracts are actually with the DOJ now for signature, and the office is working very closely, and so they expect that those contracts to be signed any day now.
In a day?
Yes, any day now,
Any
not
day.
in a day. So we're pretty confident that those childcare providers will be able to move forward at this point. And we'll
yeah.
keep in touch with them and let you know if anything
I just
changes.
wanted to make sure if we had to front some money, that it would actually be reimbursable, because again, we're trying not to do a unfunded,
Yeah.
funding thing. Okay.
So you are not asking for funds after all because you have confidence the state will deliver by this Saturday. Is that right?
Not delivered by this Saturday, but deliver, the contracts are being signed
Okay.
and the things are moving forward. I'm not sure exactly when they get the money, but I think those nonprofits now with the back dates July 1,
Okay, we'll be
They're
okay
feeling
then.
confident that
So
they're
they will be
gonna
able
be
to
okay.
continue with their
Yeah.
work
Yes.
and hire up and be assured that they're safe.
yes, as far as we're being told today, yes.
Commissioner Fisher?
Okay, so the nonprofits that we're concerned that we're going to have to kick kids out of preschool, they don't have to do that. We have assurances of that.
Yeah, we have conversations with the state office who's working with the DOJ, who's working with the nonprofits. Who are telling us things are in play, that they're moving forward and they're confident that they're going to be able to continue
I just
to
want to
work.
make sure kids aren't going to get kicked out of preschool on Friday.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree,
And
but
if you
I don't know
can't
if I
guarantee
can-
that, then we'll do
Yeah,
what we're.
I don't want to say that I can guarantee that. because I'm
Personally?
not. Yeah, I'm not that into it.
The issue after Cover Oregon, there was, if everybody remembers Cover Oregon, that was
Yes.
a big challenge. They put an extra administrative burden that has affected all contracts. So DOJ has to review those contracts within. There's a lot of confusion on who's the lawyer, who does the lawyer work for, do they answer to the department, do they do this, do they do that? And so this is going to be probably a challenge for us as recipients of government contracts into the future, and we may want to do some advocacy to help streamline that.
That's true. Yeah.
So whatever you need from us, please don't hesitate to ask your commissioners, because at least 3 of us have had pretty extensive involvement at the state level, at the legislature, and we don't want to see this. It just takes up too much time of staff, of.
Also on your fair grants, Brownfield grants, housing grants, these bills that were passed, I assume they're grant opportunities for application. You will be monitoring that for us to let us know when certain entities can apply for those.
Yes, I would say between us and our subject matter departments who are in touch with their relevant agencies, we will catch
Good.
those.
Okay, good, yeah. Our county fair will apply for a grant, so I suppose that's Sarah Ekman. Yeah, you knew about that. Our housing grants, any chance we can do anything on that? And we do have brownfields in this county. Some, I can think of one large commercial one in Molalla from an old mill site. I don't know what, I have no idea whether this will work or not. And you talked about gas stations, they're all over the place. There's underground gas stations going down Main Street in Molalla. I don't know how many there are. That's actually a state highway now. And right in the middle of town, there's this sinkhole. And they keep paving over the top. Well, it's an underground gas station that nobody wants to take responsibility and dig up. And it is problematic in our county. So I'd be interested in how to go about solving some of those problems. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. It's a very enlightening report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the issues list. Most of these are being postponed, so the American Rescue Plan Act update will postpone until next week. Next, we will do this. Sarah, please come forward. Rural Renewable Energy Development Zone Reauthorization. There's a memo in your packet. Cindy's coming too. Sarah and Cindy, please go ahead as quick as you can.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Sarah Ekman, Interim Director with BCS, and I have with me Cindy Moore, our Business and Economic Development Coordinator from our Economic Development Program. We're here today to talk to you about the Rural Renewable Energy Development Zone Reauthorization request. So this zone has existed in the county since 2011 and it expired at the end of June. It is an incentive program. Cindy's going to provide you just a couple of high points quickly. And then what we'd like to know from you today is if you support us reauthorizing this and bringing forward a resolution to indicate that at a future business meeting.
Mm-hmm. Any questions or comments? Mark?
Yes. How often has this program been used since 2011?
It has not been used.
It has not been used. So
Today.
there's been no cost to the county so far with this program. Okay. And if this is approved, what's the real benefit to the people of the county?
So the incentive, if approved, would offer either a 3 or a 5-year tax abatement to the company who is investing their dollars into the facilities that generate energy. So as a long-term benefit to the residents.
Jobs.
Could be jobs in the form of jobs. It could also be in tapping into the energy that is created on these sites.
Okay.
If I could add in, Cindy could elaborate on this. We have not used it to date. However, we are seeing more companies come forward into the county that would be more apt to use this program.
Great. I see the designation is for another 10 years. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Where can I read about this?
It's under issues.
Oh, I didn't see the link.
Yeah.
Somehow it didn't show.
That
Okay,
little- that
thank
cute little
you.
link,
I did not
The
see
cap
that.
is set at 250 million. Is that statewide?
At $250 million for Clackamas County.
Wow, that's quite a lot.
It is.
I would hope we would have a business who would want to take advantage of that. Mark, are you done?
Well, my only other comment is, in the next 10 years, I believe this will be used,
Ah,
okay?
good.
The last 10 years, maybe not so much, but in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see a lot of development in this area, so I support this. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Mark. What is the action we need to take, Gary?
Just to allow staff to bring it forward to a business meeting where that will be your formal approval there.
Any objection to that, Commissioners? Seeing none, please bring it forward.
Great, very good. Thank you. Next also is Sarah, Mount Hood Economic Alliance Board appointments. There was a memo in your packet. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. This is the Mount Hood Economic Alliance. They are an alliance that is formed. It is independent of the county. There are previous ties to the county. However, they are not an advisory board or commission. What we're coming before you today to discuss is that we still have close linkage, and I think there may be some commissioners who have some history with this. We have provided some background, but the main ask of you today is that the agreement we have with them says that the county shall appoint 6 people plus 1 alternate to serve on the board to represent the county. Cindy's just going to tell you who those folks are and then answer any questions if you have them. But we would be asking for your approval. Our thought is that if you do approve, what we would do then is prepare a letter for the chair to sign saying that the slate of candidates has been approved, since it's not a true advisory board and commission.
Well, then why are we doing it? I kind of don't understand. This is just more work for staff to do. If it's independent, Gary, I don't understand the governance structure of this.
Yeah, apparently it was an IGA the board signed with this entity 15 years ago that said you get to appoint 6 people, although it's not it's not your advisory board, but you do appoint 6 people to this group.
And so what we do is we just rubber stamp whoever they bring forward to us. To me, it's an extra effort and layer that they can handle themselves. Maybe we want to review this governance structure. And who came up with the names of the people that we are going to approve of today?
Certainly. The Mount Hood Economic Alliance hosted the recruitment efforts and then provided the slate of candidates that's before you today.
Okay.
And I will just note that 5 of the 6 are current Mount Hood Economic Alliance board members. The newest member then would be Matt Lorenzen from the city of Estacada.
Okay, and let's move on. When we move forward on this, I don't think this is not a function that we need to do.
We can certainly re-engage with the Economic Alliance. They're being managed by the Mid-Columbia County Economic Development District, or MCED, and we can work with them to follow up on that regard. And we're still hopeful we could get your approval to move forward
Oh, I'm
the slate
sure
for
you
today.
can today. I mean,
Okay.
that's not the issue. It's just something else for people to do. Do we give them any money?
We do not provide it as a rural revolving loan program. So as the applications pay back their loans, they are then reinvested and available for new businesses to apply.
Okay, Gary?
So I propose, if you're willing, Commissioners, approve this slate for one last time, and then
Yes.
let's redo the IGA so we don't have to do this ever again.
Absolutely. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Schrader to approve the members presented for the Mount Hood Economic Alliance Board, and seconded by Commissioner Scholl. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Christina, please call the poll.
Yes, Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
and Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for presenting.
Thank you. The preschool promise you just discussed, the supportive housing will postpone until next week. Although quickly, I do want to share, I think you already know this, Commissioners, the Administrators Housing Strategy Team is going to continue its work. Commissioners Schrader and Savas sit on that. It is an informal group to discuss with staff suggestions regarding the supportive housing services program. Every discussion will be brought back before the full board on Tuesdays at your issue sessions, but we will reinstate or continue the work of that group in the short term, just so that we can move forward and bring you quick, nimble things to consider regarding the supportive housing services program. Commissioner Savas has requested, and staff is working on, an analysis of the $8.1 million which was identified in the local implementation plan for the supportive housing services program that we as Clackamas County are committing to fund annually $8.1 million of supportive housing services that is separate from the tax income from Metro, and these are state, federal, and some general fund dollars that we are using. Commissioner Savas, just because there's so much confusion out in the community, asked for an accounting of exactly how are we spending that money, what's the proposal of how to spend that money. So staff is working on that. We'll bring it to the strategy team first and then to the full board, hopefully in the next week. So just wanted to loop you all in. We're doing that work for you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Next, draft.
So, hey, Gary,
Go ahead,
before we
yeah.
stop that, one thing, so we all have all the information. I think where we broke down last time is that I didn't have information that maybe the strategy team had. So what I would propose is that if it's going to continue, that it be recorded, and then I'll watch it afterwards. I'll submit my questions. And because we can't daisy chain on this, my suggestion is that I submit my questions to the whole board, just so we have it, but nobody respond. And then at least everybody's on the same page as to what the questions are. I'm wanting to do this because Gary had to do too much work, because I have a lot of history of knowledge about this, and we just have a breakdown in our communication.
I was very disappointed about that, I have to admit. And I think that if we're going to work together as a team in the future, which is what I am committed to doing, that we need to be clear and we need to be able to trust one another. And I also, with all due respect, Commissioner, I do want to work with you, and I respect your heart and all of your work you've put into it. But I think the letter that came out Friday from you really put us all in a bad spot. And, well, put me in a bad spot, and Commissioner Savas. We had worked very hard, and it was a pretty solid program. And I really feel blindsided by that. So I just wanted to mention that. I'm not angry, because I don't get angry, but, yeah, we can't work that way.
Oh, I agree. So I didn't have information that a procurement process was going to be canceled if we adopted the plan that you and Commissioner Savas were proposing. I didn't have that, or I would have never went down that path. So all I'm suggesting is that it be recorded, that I watch it, I submit my questions to everyone so that there is transparency, and we can address it. Because if we are going to have two members of the board lead this, it's important for the other commissioners to have the information that they need. And it's just too much work for staff.
Well, and the other piece of this is, Commissioner, I wish that you had spoken to us prior to that letter, because I think that would have cleared up a lot of things, and it didn't happen.
I'm not sure what letter you're
The
referring to.
letter that you presented at the meeting on Friday with the...
Okay, so I didn't present a letter. I responded to an email that I made sure my administrator looked at on Friday to make sure I was in alignment with what was appropriate. So
I'm sorry, what email did you respond to? I'm just trying to be transparent, too. What email
I forwarded you
respond to?
everything.
Well, I'll have to check again then.
Yeah. So there was an email that was sent to the Oversight Committee. I worked with Gary Schmidt to come up with what my response could be, because it was focused towards Clackamas County. Gary Schmidt corrected some information, which we worked on. I sent that, and then it was never presented, but the staff for Metro referenced it, and that we talked about it. So I did present verbally.
But I think that before you do something like that again, we need to use the same process you just outlined for the housing meeting, because we all have to be informed with this. I hadn't seen that particular email from Metro.
Well, that was
and I did not
forwarded to
tell.
everyone.
I'm just saying, I didn't see it. And did you take Gary's edits?
Yes, absolutely.
All of them?
I'm going to make a recommendation that, that Martha and Paul report back verbally every week on
Sure,
this.
we can do that.
And Gary, we're going to make time for that on Tuesday.
Every Tuesday, yes.
I think writing a written report might be too difficult. Commissioner Fisher, if you want to bring your questions at the Tuesday reporting, I think that's very appropriate. And
Okay.
then the rest of us
I just want to
that have-
hear the information that Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Schrader have. I need that information.
So do I. We all
Yeah.
need the information to act to make
So my
intelligent.
suggestion would be either we do it as a whole body or that it be recorded and we be able to watch.
I think that when we present at our Tuesday meeting, it is automatically recorded like it is now.
No, when they're doing their task force. Because
No, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That's an internal discussion with two of our members and staff. There's going to be too much information. It's going to be too bothersome to do.
I would have to agree with that. I do, because we had done so much work on that, really trying to navigate this through. And to have you pull your support, it's okay, we've all done it, but that put us in a very bad spot. I had a discussion with the Here Together executive director, and it was pretty frank. I like her quite a bit, but I was pretty direct with her. And of course, her feeling was that we did this behind closed doors, it wasn't transparent. And I wasn't understanding that because our LIP, our local improvement plan, is transparent. This was an internal finance issue that we're trying to work through, I hope as a team, so we can at least get it started. We can at least maintain what we need to maintain. And when I hear from an external advocacy group that, well, our work wasn't transparent, I am absolutely floored. No one has ever said that to me before. And I do have to admit, I did remind her that I never got to see the poll for Here Together. And yet I was asked to support something I had never seen the complete information on, which is why I kind of stepped back from it. That was one of the key reasons. So I agree with you, Commissioner Fisher. We cannot work on partial information, but it's going to have to be both ways. And I really believe the advocacy committee, the folks that are the advocates out there, we need to have, I know we're going to be having a listening session with them, and I'm looking forward to it, because I think we have to clarify the information and where we are and why we have the funding issues we have, not the least of which is that other two counties are ahead because, remember, they got a full allocation of CARES dollars and we did not.
Yeah.
So CARES and now funding that we're just not getting the revenue we're anticipated. And, I think that and to really, from my perspective, to maintain my credibility and Commissioner Savas's credibility at a regional table, we need to be able to operate and we need to support one another. So
I think that the entire commission should have known that a procurement process was going to be canceled if we approved the $10 million plan. That would have been important for all of us to know.
Well, I think that's probably assumed. If you're not going to go forward with other programs, that the procurement, and it was not a surprise to me.
Well, we made a statement that a procurement process was underway and we were proceeding with that.
So, Commissioner Fisher, I want to know how many times you're going to beat a dead horse to death. Because I'm tired of revisiting issue after issue, statement after statement from you. I have a feeling you're trying to get on the record for somebody. This discussion has ended right now. Gary, what's up next?
Next, draft Park Avenue project update letter, Everett Wild from County Administration. Will you please come forward? I think it's your first time ever presenting before the board in this position. Congratulations.
It is. Thank you. Everett Wild, County Administration. This is a draft letter in response to a request from the board last week that will be sent to the McLaughlin Area Plan Implementation Team, MAPIT, partner organizations, encouraging them to take another look at the Park Avenue Community Project and build some more consensus in the community. The letter has been reviewed by DTD and PGA. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Have all commissioners read it?
Commissioner Savas has. I don't know.
And Commissioner Savas has read this letter. He probably helped write it, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay. Gary, do we approve this through motion?
Yes, please.
I accept a motion.
I move that we support this letter for the chairs, or do you want all the signatures or just the chair?
I think all of you signing it would be very appropriate.
Okay,
I
then
do.
from all of us then.
Yeah.
Seconded.
Yeah, a motion has been made to support the letter to the MAPIT partner organizations for Park Avenue project, been made by Commissioner Fisher, seconded by Commissioner Scholl. Further discussion? Hearing none. Christina, please call the poll.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
And Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. What's up next, Gary?
Excellent, thank you, Everett. Next, we're going to jump to the consent agenda request. Thank you to the department directors for being patient. We'll go in order. We'll start with Health, Housing, Human Services. Departments have postponed most of these until next week, so I'll tell you what we're going forward on. We're starting with number 4 on the Health, Housing, and Human Services consent agenda. The first 3 will be postponed. So number 4, approval of a consent to transfer, assignment, assumption, and release agreement for 85 Causey Acadia Gardens home loan. No financial impact to the existing home loan. No county general funds are involved. Rod or Mark, go ahead.
Yes, and I've brought Mark from CD because this is a bit different than what we usually do, so I'll just go right to him to save time. So if you can explain what this is.
Sure. My name is Mark Soroy, Community Development Division. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Gary. So these are 3 different home loans that we provided to Geller Silvis for these 3 different projects. It's a total of 145 affordable housing units, and they're all in the Clackamas Town Center area. Geller Silvis is selling the properties to Guardian Holding, Inc., so the obligation for the loan is being transferred to Guardian Holding, Inc. That same company's been managing these 3 properties, and then they moved to
Is there any relationship from one company to the other?
I'm not aware of any relationship.
And there's no conflict of ownership on these?
I'm not aware of that. These have been reviewed by our county council.
Okay, then that's probably okay.
So I'm just confused a little bit. So is this the new, with the housing bond dollars that is by the MAC station there?
No, these
This
are,
is a different 145 units?
yes, these are 3 different. So one's 52, the other's 52, the other one's 41. And they've been built, and the loan was approved by this board years ago.
Okay, so it's the one of them is directly across from the parking lot of Clackamas Town Center. They have a food pantry there every now and then a farmer's market.
Yes, there's one called Town Center Station.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was putting in my brain.
Yeah, we have a few
And
other
you need an
developments.
approval for them to switch a loan?
Well, it's a loan that was signed by this board, and then we're transferring that loan to another entity. So we want to make sure everybody knows what's going on, and that's why we had the county council review them.
Okay, and they're good.
Okay. Any other, Mark?
There's no cost to the county on this transfer?
There's no cost to the county commission.
Hearing any other objections? None? Okay.
Okay, we'll add to a consent agenda. The next, number 5, is the exact same thing. This one is for the Town Center Station. And actually, number 6 is the exact same thing for Mount Scott Terrace Apartments.
And just for clarification, those are the 3 Mark was alluding to.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said that. I apologize.
Do we?
So you're okay with 4, 5, and 6 then,
Okay,
Commissioners?
if you're approving
I'm
all 3.
Commissioners, any objection? Mark? Okay,
Good to go.
okay, got
Very
it.
good.
Thank you.
Great. Number 7, authorization to sign HUD grant award document for 2020-2021 Continuum of Care Program funds. Total HUD grant is $1,276,308 with $74,587 budgeted as a match from county general funds.
Yes, and programs and services include the CLC planning, facilitation, and information system, coordinated housing access, and rapid rehousing. So this is a major grant or revenue source for us, and that funds multiple things throughout the housing arena. So, and there is the other piece that I want to point to you, because we used to say no general funds, but this is no other general funds. And so there is $75,000 of county general fund that's budgeted to be a match to this $1.2 million. And that $75,000 really comes from the social services piece of our system. So there is a match here of $75,000.
Any comments?
That match is required by HUD? That $75,000 for the general fund?
If we're doing it, I believe it's required.
Yes, Commissioner Scholl, each of these grants requires a cash match of some
Okay.
sort, so whenever we apply for the funds, we say, what's the match going to come from? The other grants as well, there's 8 individual contracts and grants, but they're all put together in this, what's called a consolidated grant application, so. So to answer your question, yes, there is a match requirement, but
Any objections to this? Seeing
So
none?
I have having challenges trying to get my stuff to work. But if everybody's good, if I have any questions before this comes up, I will call you. But I can't say that because I just need to read it.
Okay,
would be
thank you.
fine.
So,
All right.
yeah.
Number 8, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon Housing and Community Services Department to administer Community Resource Division funds. There is a revenue agreement with the State of Oregon Housing and Community Services Department not to exceed $31,747,027. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, and this one would fund programs and services for low-income elderly and disabled individuals, warming and emergency shelter programs, rent and utility assistance, stabilization of chronically homeless clients, and home weatherization assistance. This is a biennial, so it would end June 30, 2023. No
Any
general
questions
fund.
or concerns
Sorry.
for the presenters? Seeing none?
Item 9, approval of an intergovernmental subrecipient agreement with the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, Milwaukee Center to provide social services for Clackamas County residents. Maximum agreement is $424,192, funded through Social Services Division agreements with the Oregon Department of Human Services, Oregon Housing and Community Resources, and various transportation agreements. No county general funds are involved.
This subrecipient agreement would serve congregate and home-delivered meals, health promotion activities, transportation, and information and referral activities at the senior center.
Great. Love it.
And I believe the NCPRD part was already approved by you last week or the week before, so you've already done that part. This is now the county
Yes.
portion.
Any questions or objections? Seeing none?
Great, thank you. And item 10 is pulled till next week, so thank you, Rod and Mark.
you.
Next, Water Environment Services, Greg. Approval of an amendment to the conservation easement granted to Water Environment Services by the Athey Creek Christian Fellowship for the church's accessible parking improvements project. There is no financial impact.
Thank you, Gary, Chair Smith, and Commissioners. This is a very simple transaction, a win-win. In 2007, there was a church that was built outside of West Lynn in unincorporated Clackamas County. As part of that transaction, West was given a conservation easement for some wetland stream area nearby. They came to us and said, hey, we want to expand our parking lot a bit to have better disabled parking. They offered to do enhancements to that, the remaining conservation easement for water quality and habitat. Seems like a good deal for both of us, so we would like to go ahead and transfer that conservation easement back to the church and in exchange for that service.
In exchange for what?
For them enhancing the
Oh,
rest of
great,
the
got it.
conservation. Right.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none.
All right, thank you, Greg. Next, Transportation and Development. Item 1 is being pulled till next week. Number 2, approval of a contract with Eagle Elsner for the Thiessen Area Paving Package Number 1, total contract value $480,000, funded through the Community Road Fund. No county general funds are involved. This is a request to put on this Thursday's business meeting agenda. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, all. This is part of the Thiessen Area Paving Package. It's an asphalt paving and road reconstruction contract. This paving package will resurface about a half a mile of road. More specifically, portions of Harmon Court, portions of Vista Lane, portions of Anacona Court, Bantam Court, and last but not least, Cornish Court. These are all local roadways. I can inform the board that this project was advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on May 13, 2021. Bids were publicly open on June 15, 2021. After the review of the bids, Eagle Elsner, Inc. was determined to be the lowest responding bidder. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Any comments or questions for the presenter? Seeing none.
All right, number 3, approval of a contract with Murray Smith for the construction, engineering support, and inspection services for the 2021 paving packages project. Total contract value, $214,217, funded through the Community Road Fund and the Road Fund. No county general funds are involved. This also is a request for this Thursday's consent agenda.
Thank you so much. The county's identified 3 paving projects, 2 of which are scheduled for summer of 2021. It's Arista and Thiessen, and 1 to occur in the winter of 2021 and into the spring and early summer of 2022. That's our Webster area package. This contract provides services for approximately 1.2 additional miles of roads and 4 reconstructed ADA ramps for the 2021 paving packages as well. Project was advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on April 22nd, 2021. Proposals were opened on May 20th, 2021. DTD personnel scored Murray Smith Incorporated proposal and confirmed their capabilities and performance and ranked them with the highest score of any proposer. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none?
Okay, next, Development Agency, we're postponing item 1. Item 2, release of a security deposit to Oregon Beverage Recycling Cooperative as required in a post-closing escrow and development agreement. $125,000 will be dispersed from the escrow account to the Oregon Beverage Recycling Cooperative. No other fiscal impact. Go ahead.
This is kind of a one-off. You don't do this very often, but essentially as a part of the development agency, when we do projects, we essentially require a security deposit to be put in place. And that security deposit is to ensure that the certain objectives of the development agency and the board for that particular property, this was part of our Clackamas Industrial Area Opportunity Site, are achieved. Essentially, we have gotten information from OCRB that they have achieved that, we have validated that, and those essentially are around floor area ratios so that they're building a certain size of development. They're around completing construction with a certain period. There are also jobs per square foot in that particular area. And there are also information about annual wages that they have provided. So essentially, our staff has worked to coordinate and affirm those measures have been met. And so we are here to look for a release of those funds back to the developer. So,
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none.
All right, item 3, 4, and 5 are postponed until next week. Thank you, Dan. Assessment and taxation is postponed until next week. Public and government affairs postponed until next week. Technology services, come on down. Dave. Number 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas Broadband Exchange and the City of Hillsborough. This is a reimbursement of $5,000 from the City of Hillsborough to the Clackamas Broadband Exchange for staff time expenses. No county general funds are involved. Go ahead, Dave.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dave Dwork, Technology Services. This is an IGA between CBX and the City of Hillsborough to help them in the process of moving the 911 Washington County Center, known as WACA, from one location to another. Being that WACA is part of the regional 911 consortium, it's critical that they maintain connectivity to the other centers, including high-speed redundant connections and fiber. As such, they're asking CBX to help them on the project management, since obviously we have some experience in that, and they're reimbursing us for staff time of $5,000, up to $5,000 for project management.
Okay. Any questions or comments for the presenter?
It's nice to be needed.
Yep.
Especially when they pay us. Yes.
Yes.
All right, number 2, approval of an amendment between Clackamas Broadband Exchange and the State of Oregon. Funding will be done through the Clackamas Broadband Exchange budget and later reimbursed by the State of Oregon. Monthly reoccurring cost through June 30, 2026 is $510 and a non-reoccurring cost of $33,900. No county general funds are involved.
Very simple. It's an amendment to extend the current SLA with the State of Oregon to expand 2 new sites. One is the Department of Forestry in Walla. The other is an ODOT site in Estacada. Also to go out to year 2026 in the current SLA. They will be reimbursing us $510 a month for the fiber lease and a one-time $33,900 for the fiber build-out for the construction.
Any comments? Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, that $33,000 for the fiber build-out, that's going to cover what you need to do it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's off of our main line. It's just having to make connections out to their sites.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none?
Okay, there's a monthly recurring cost and a non-recurring cost. Got it. MRC, NRC. Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Answer my own question.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Dave. Next, County Administration, Shannon. 1, approval of a fiscal year 2020-2021 work and financial plan with the United States Department of Agriculture, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services for Predator Management. Maximum contract value is $79,500, and it is paid through county general funds. This is a request to put on this Thursday's business meeting. Go ahead, Shannon.
Hello, Shannon Bays, County Administration. In the past, this has come to you through finance. It's part of the non-D contracts being transitioned over to County Administration. So this is year 3 of a 5-year cooperative agreement where we are contracting with the U.S. Department of Agriculture Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services for Predator Management. And so they help us with birds and other wildlife when they are posing a potential hazard for people or property in the county. And so it happens every year. We've got 2 more years on this contract.
What's a non-D contract? Is that what you said?
Yeah, last.
Is it D is in dog initial?
Yeah, this is part of the funds that used to come through finance that were the non-departmental funds. This contract lived there, and we are now transitioning those into county administration. And so we will be bringing you those contracts moving forward.
Non-departmental. Okay, got it. Any other questions,
I have a
Mark?
question. This contract is for a private contractor to do predator control in the county.
It is not. It's for the cooperative services with APHIS, which is through the Department of Agriculture. And so they have.
They do it.
Yeah, they do it.
Okay. Okay, good, thanks.
Commissioner Fisher?
Gosh, it ceases to amaze me on how much stuff we do, Clackamas County.
Oh, I know.
But, so, what's the predators, like rats? I mean, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, it could be rats, but mostly it's like coyotes and cougars that might need to be moved. Sometimes there might be beavers that are creating water hazards as they block waterways and they cause flooding to private property or county lands. There's times where birds might carry diseases and need to be
This is really a big
trapped and
deal in the rural
removed.
areas.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's
yeah.
actually in the urban areas with coyotes.
Oh,
What about a
coyotes.
skunk? Would a skunk be considered?
It's not a predator.
I don't
It's
know.
not a predator?
It doesn't seem very predatory unless you make it mad.
Yeah. Interesting. So I just
Yes.
wanted to have an idea. That's all.
Okay.
It was just interesting.
It is, it is. Any other questions or comments for the presenter? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. The finance item is pulled until next week. That is the consent agenda list. So commissioners, you do have a policy session left. Commissioners Shull and Schrader, how long can you stay?
I need to leave, I think, at 3:35 to get there on time.
Okay, hang on a minute. What is that?
This is,
That's for the VFW,
VFW
a
is-
ceremony for the USS Oregon that's being commissioned.
and the policy session is your performance Clackamas update on your climate action plan goal.
That can probably be done at any time, I'm thinking.
It's not urgent, it's not a rush. I just wanted to, Nancy Bush and I wanted to go back to your goals you approved, and every quarter going forward, we'll have one update on one of your goals, and this was to be the first one to update you, but we could reschedule it, for sure.
I think we need to reschedule it, and I think you need to be there on time.
All right, sorry, Dan and Eben, we'll reschedule. Thanks for being patient.
Okay.
So I still have Commissioner Communications, if you'd like to close with that.
I can wait till
Commissioner Fisher?
I'll go last because I got to remember what I wanted to share with you
Okay,
guys.
Commissioner
Sorry.
Schrader, do you have anything to say?
No, not particularly. I've just been going through packets.
Me too. And Commissioner Scholl?
I'd like to wait till Thursday if I can.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner
Do
Fisher,
you
I
have
guess.
anything? Oh, it's back to me.
No, you
He's
know,
like,
I'm
that
not
was,
gonna say
that was
anything
too
today."
fast.
I know.
It's like, man, we are like a whirlwind. What was it? Well, we had the Metro Oversight Committee on Monday, and Jill Smith was awesome. I have to say, she did an excellent job answering questions. And I think you were listening, Commissioner Schrader, so you might have some things to share. There was some, just seemed like there was an effort from everyone to try to work together on recognizing the challenges and figuring it out. And that the Metro Oversight Committee, in my view, and Gary had a thought, because Emily reported back to Gary on what her perceptions were, that there was good collaboration with the group. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, in fact, we had multiple of our staff were listening to that meeting, and all of them felt it was a very positive meeting, and the group, the Oversight Committee felt very positive about the steps we're taking in Clackamas County. They understand we're doing our very best, and we're moving forward as best we can. So that's what they heard at the meeting.
Yeah, and I just wanted to give an update. Commissioner Schrader and she would like to help assist with this process, but I wanted to give the board an update on the things that I have worked on so far, because we talked about looking at other entities to provide gap
Yes.
funding.
How's that going?
It's fascinating, actually. So I've talked with Providence, I didn't know how heavily they have been investing in this space, which is very, very good. And so they are looking within their circles. I don't expect that these things will materialize simply because the need is so urgent, and these entities have been investing and they're working. It just takes them a while. But some exciting things that Providence is working on is looking at leveraging dollars for Medicaid dollars and really honing in and working on that system.
Oh, nice.
Aetna is going to be, and I haven't looked at it yet, it's in my email, haven't had a chance, came in at like almost 1:30. They want a summary about what exactly we're asking for, because they are going to be talking with their community investment person on Thursday. She had said that they have mostly depleted their $115 million investment in housing that they have done. They contributed to a whole program in Portland, which was really significant. They are absolutely interested in partnering with us. But she was quite frank. She says, I don't see it until 2022 because we've depleted 2021. But you know what? Just the thought of all of this work and these partnerships are really great.
Well, that's good you reached out.
I've been sharing text messages with Max William with the Oregon Community Foundation. Seth Lyons with Department of Human Services has reached out to his contacts. He says they do not move that fast, Sonia. Don't expect anything from the Oregon Community Foundation. But regardless, I'm going to have a conversation, hoping, Commissioner Schrader, that you can be on the call with me for that,
Sure.
because these are excellent relationships for us to build as
I've known
commissioners.
Max for a very long
I have
time.
too.
Yeah.
Yep,
Tell him hi for me.
I've known Max for a long time as well.
We served together in the legislature.
Yeah, he was served with Kurt.
There is a finance person that's a creative thinker that Parrot Creek connected me with, and that is a phone call, Commissioner Schrader, if you're able to join on Friday at 10 a.m. It's just to think through things and think about what might be possible. I put a call into a board member that I have a relationship with at the Meyer Memorial Trust, and I do know this is just great. So throughout this whole process of looking at, this is the need and this is how we get to the result, looking at leveraging and creating a system. And so the work that all of these different entities are doing are all contributing to this work. And it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm hearing from mayors slowly but surely. But
Yeah, how's that going? Because you were making calls to mayors. How's that going?
Well, I'm having coffee with a number of them on Friday to see if maybe they may contribute some of their ARPA dollars.
Good.
Or help us with this too.
Good. Excellent, Martha.
Yeah.
That's very good. Very good.
And that whole concept, I felt, Commissioner Shea, you may feel differently, but I felt that the Oversight Committee embraced that approach, that our board we're not working on it. We are engaged and we are committed to our plan,
And we're overturning every rock. to
and we
save
are
for every
overturning
dollar.
every rock. And with that, building the buy-in from people in our community, that's important. It can't just be Clackamas County. It's got to be all of us
Well, and if
working on
anything,
this.
the outreach is creating more awareness, the county asking for help from more partners.
That's right.
That, I think, is good. Very
And
good.
the awareness that we are different, and the wildfires, and the fact that it's scary, it's coming up. We're at the end of
I know.
July right now. We have a really hot weekend coming up. I'm concerned about that.
I am too.
That's why we have that's why we can't spend our contingency in reserves.
Yes, and I've been
Because we're
telling people
Wildfire
that.
County,
Yep,
and
and I think people get it. And I think that helps educate the uniqueness of this county, which is really, really important with the power brokers around. And then the only other piece that I've been concerned about, Daniel answered some of it, and I know that Gary's been on it, but we've just got to be on top of the messaging regarding the heat wave, and it's really people reaching out to the people that they know. It's so critical. So the more we can get that message out. And then the last piece, I'm hoping, we had a terrible, I don't know if people read it. Do you guys read the emails from folks? A threatening email that if we were to do mask mandates, that they were going to come after us, and it was quite concerning. I'm concerned about that, Gary, so I'd like people to look into that, and we shouldn't have threats from people out there in the community. But I thought, what the heck, what is this? We're not doing mask mandates. Where's this coming from? And then I hear that Multnomah County is strongly recommending masks.
But it's optional.
Right, it's optional. But what I want to know what's going on in Clackamas County. What are our numbers? How are our hospitals? What's the Delta doing? What's going on? Do we have certain areas that this virus is
I've already asked for that information.
taking hold on?
If we, presentation.
Oh,
Yeah.
good, because I don't care if it's a presentation or if we just get, if all of
I
us
think what we're
commissioners
gonna
get a
do-
bulletin.
I think we're going to get, we're going to get emails on all those questions you just presented, because I've been talking with Nancy Bush and Gary on this very issue. We have foregone our weekly presentations at our policy meetings and our board meetings. So, but we still need to get that information out, what our vax rate is, what our hospitalization rates are as we're moving forward. And that's going to be coming, and those are good questions.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, hey, you guys over there talking out of turn.
Sorry, we were talking about submarines.
Curious, I don't know what we are doing as far as our outreach to our communications on it, but we probably need a strategy at this point. What I do really like is that the counties are being encouraged from the public health response to take the lead as to what is unique in our community. So if we can figure out where our most at-risk areas are and target our communications in a way that will be effective, I think that is very, very smart. And we shouldn't give up this opportunity to say, here at the local level, we know our community best and we need to communicate. But I just don't have the information as far as how
Well-
that's breaking down on zip code and who's getting.
Well, that information's on the OHA's website. You can get the zip code there. You can also get our county counts on the OHA website,
Yeah.
but more specifically to Clackamas County. I had a conversation with the governor yesterday, and she said, counties are now doing their own health management. Numbers are going up in some counties. Make sure you have a plan. She never did really ask for the plan, but make sure that we have a plan and contingency, and I've talked to our staff about it, and we do have a plan. We do also are recognizing if the possibility of the Delta variant raising its head in Clackamas County, we are continuing our efforts to reach out to critical areas that have not been vaccinated, and I think we've been able to identify yet 2 more subset of groups to be able to vaccinate people. And I don't want to really say who those are publicly, but to offer that up. And we're going to continue with our efforts to offer vaccinations. I believe the county is at 67.7% vax rate, which is one of the highest in the state. We should be very proud of that fact. But the vaccination is optional. It will remain optional. Masks will remain optional in our county. To think that we're going to do a mask mandate 18 months or 15 months after everybody in lockdown will not be received well by our people. In my conversation last night with the other 2 chairs of Multnomah and Washington County, they agreed. Deb Gafori said, we issued a statement that it's highly recommended, but it is optional. They will not go with a mask mandate either.
Well, it doesn't really, if you're vaccinated, you're not going to be.
That's right.
There are a few breakthroughs, but it's not significant.
Yeah,
It's the
and so-
people- Yeah, if people don't want to get vaccinated.
There are some that don't want to, and I think Multnomah County and Clackamas
It's-
County has recognized some underserved areas, and we can try to target those and ask them, not force them. And maybe since they're underserved, they don't have a transportation route, or they don't have the communications available to them to let them know where it is. I mean, I just don't know why. We don't know why the underserved areas haven't got the vax yet. So.
Access.
So, yes, access, communications, knowledge, all that type of stuff. So those very good coming forward, and we'll be getting emails as soon as they compile the information. And I think we should be getting them soon, maybe as early as tomorrow, talking to Nancy.
This week, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Gary, anything else?
That's all.
Thanks
We're
for-
adjourned today. Thank you for your good work, Commissioners.